Good morning and welcome. We are gathered here today to mourn the loss and to celebrate the life of Barbara Weil-McNerney, beloved mother and daughter and grandmother and friend and part of this community. Welcome to the sacred occasion. We gather together in our tradition because when we remember those we love, we are given ongoing life by them. We are enlivened by the gifts they provided us when they were physically with us, just as we are energized by the gifts that remain with us as they stay by our side spiritually. Everyone experiences the journey of loss in their own way and in their own time, but we are drawn together, I believe, in religious community to be lifted up by the commonality and shared need for affirmation of grace and of love in the shadow of that loss. Indeed, the way we are called to be together in religious community in times of loss is not really different than the way we are called together at every other time in life. We come together to share that which is human, to point together toward that which is most precious, and to be buoyed by it as we float on together. That is particularly important today to remember because Barbara journeyed with this community for so long and in so many important ways. Coming together performs many functions. It performs, in this case, an important function of healing. Healing demands both individual and collective faith, individual and collective action. How strange to begin a memorial talking about a time for action. What we do today are the practices that sustain us for a lifetime. We come into this space to open one of the most private of experiences to each other, to be vulnerable in it, and in that vulnerability and the sharing that it accompanies, we are strengthened by it. This is a special place, a refuge, and this is a special time, one I hope of comfort and possibility. This is a time that we make for each other. You've come together to make hope and comfort both possible. It's special what we practice here, and in this hour we spend together is a special time to practice this, but I hope it's not exclusive to this hour. I hope this just reminds us what it is to be family and what it is to be a community of faith together. So my friends, let us remember, let us mourn, and let us today celebrate. Come, let us now worship together. May I invite forward Guillermo Kelly for a reading this morning. And you may use the pulpit or the hand mic, whichever you prefer.
Last August, my wife and I were going to Barbara's 90th birthday in Florida. About 2 weeks before that, Nancy told me that Barbara had passed away. So we're both here today to celebrate her life, of course. And I'm very honored and humbled to be with this group of persons who knew both Bob and Barbara, and to be with their family in this sacred place at this sacred time. How did I get to know the Wilds? Well, I came here to Philadelphia in the summer of 1964. I'm a Penn graduate, class of 68. And the Wilds were my host family. And I had great times together with them. I became very, very close to them. I love them very, very much. And I'm very touched at this moment that we're bringing both together again in this place which they loved, and where I also came with them to this church, a few times while I was here during the weekends, a few weekends, maybe 15 weekends a year. So I got to know them very, very well, and this enriched my time at Penn very much. It enriched my life, and it taught me many lessons of life. They were very close to me, and I to them. And they have stayed with me all this time after school. So, well, Nancy, Jim, I'm humbled and honored to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation. You all are part of our lives, and I hope we just keep in touch. Thank you very much.
A few words from the poet Maya Angelou. When great trees fall, rocks on distant hills shudder, lions hunker down in tall grasses, and even elephants lumber after safety. When great trees fall in forests, small things recoil in silence, their senses eroded beyond fear. When great souls die, the air around us becomes light, rare, sterile. We breathe briefly. Our eyes briefly see with a hurtful clarity. Our memory, suddenly sharpened, examines, gnaws on kind words, on said promised walks never taken. Great souls die and our reality bound to them takes leave of us. Our souls, dependent upon their nurture, now shrink, wizened. Our minds, formed and informed by their radiance, fall away. We are not so much maddened as reduced to the unutterable ignorance of dark, cold caves. And when great souls die, after a period, peace blooms, slowly and always irregularly. Spaces fill with a kind of soothing electric vibration. Our senses, restored, never to be the same, whisper to us, they existed. They existed. We can be and be better, for they existed. There ends our reading. We are here today to celebrate a life well lived. Today, as we memorialize, we recognize the unique quality and enduring power of the life created by Barbara. We are here today amidst those feelings of loss and grief, but as the poet Maya, she said to us, we're also here amidst a different feeling. Some space has passed and some blossoming, no doubt. We are better, for she existed. We are here amidst the abundance of gifts given to us, and so we are called in some ways to rejoice and to celebrate today. Our Unitarian Universalist tradition places the emphasis on life. I understand Barbara came to know the Unitarian Church in the 1950s. That's some time ago. Married, I believe, in the Unitarian Church. And what is so attractive about the church today, and perhaps the church then, was its power to connect, whether it's in marriage, whether it's across religious lines, or simply the connection of heart to heart and soul to soul. We are expressing, I believe, and demonstrating our greatest faith when we show care for each other. Showing care for each other is, I believe, a way that we do honor to the legacy of Barbara in this place and in this family. It's the way we carry it forward. We remember a great life by practicing those things that made it great. And I want to return again and again that it is the practices of her heart and her way with other people, when I hear the stories, that what must be lifted up rather than the facts of a life. The facts of a life, though, are amazing and wonderful. From a one-room schoolhouse to Wharton. 70 years in the Unitarian Church, a love of music and a gift for it. A world traveler and a keeper of family, one who raises up children to themselves be great trees. That one raises great trees is a legacy. That one loves their family and loves their friends and is unafraid to show it is the legacy I want to shine a spotlight on today. Love is the eternal and sustaining power that we have. And it is part of the testament to her life that you exist and that you are here today with loving and open hearts. So today, as we remember the wonderful life that Barbara lived in this world, let us feel gratitude and let us feel love. And let's feel some confidence, because I want to say to you that you will see her again. You will see her again when her wisdom guides you through hard stretches in your journey. You will see her again when you live more fully because of what she built and what she passed on. You will see her again when her gifts and her habits and her words bubble up in your own selves and in your children and in your friends. You will see her again every time she is in your heart. Feel her present there, whispering to you in each beat words of assurance, words that sustain, words that cause you to love more. May it be so. Amen. Now, let us turn to a time of remembering. I invite you just for a moment to turn inward for reflection on your own memories, both what today is breaking your heart a bit for what we miss, but also today what is filling your heart. What is filling your heart on this day? And so I invite you inwardly to lift up the images and stories and moments of a life shared together, life treasured together. Let's just sit together for a moment of silence. Now we will enter a time of sharing together. I'd first like to invite David Hockenberry forward, no viola in hand, to give us our first sharing.
Thank you. It is certainly gratifying to be here among those whose lives connected with and intertwined with Barbara's, especially in this Unitarian church. This beautiful place was the nexus of her spiritual life and beliefs. She was a strong supporter of this church, but the church also supported her. She had many, many friends here, so for decades it was a social touchstone as well. She often played her viola here with and among her closest musical associates. She would recharge here, not only in attendance at the worship services, but also with the beauty and serenity of these grounds and among the many kindred spirits that she shared fellowship with here. In these rooms, these halls, patios, walkways, especially in the springtime. For her, this was a safe place, warm, inviting, comfortable, and familiar. I can think of no better, more appropriate setting with which to remember her and to share thoughts and memories among those who remember her best, all of you. There are some here today who knew her longer and more intimately than I, but her association with the Hockenberry family goes back all the way to the 1960s. Somehow fortune and circumstance have brought us all together to recall Barbara's essential qualities. Please allow me to try to recall some as well. I first met Barbara through my father, Ron. He used to hang out in this place a lot. Barbara's son, Eric, was a music student of Ron's, elementary school, I believe. He quickly became friends of Barbara's family. I first remember meeting him at their home on Roberts Road. I was pretty young at the time, yet I have several very distinct memories of that evening. First, I remember Eric sitting behind a miniature electric racetrack, smiling with these small cars zipping it around in a perpetual loop. The second thing I remember is that Nancy, for some reason, wasn't all that thrilled about demonstrating her musical prowess. Third, I remembered the dinner. As some of you here today know, Barbara's culinary skills were formidable. Her gourmet spreads were hard to forget. This was especially true of her desserts. She inherited every bit of her mother, Helen Whiting's, baking skills. Indeed, Barbara not only mastered her mother's Pennsylvania Dutch touch with pies, She extended them well into European patisseries of all types. Low-fat, dietetic, low-cal, and paleo had no place in Barbara's lexicon, and even less so in her kitchen. I know she must have worked hard at it, but she made it seem so doggone easy. In any event, from that night on, I always knew that at every lunch, dinner, party, or event that Barbara held, I could look forward to being extremely well fed. And indeed, at least several of the extra pounds I still carry on my waistline today have their origin in Barbara's rhubarb pie. And in this room, I'm sure I'm not alone. The fourth thing that impressed me that evening was what an amazing, inviting, warm, and gracious hostess Barbara was. She genuinely relished company and was so engaging she quickly made everybody in the room, even a shy young kid like me, feel connected and at ease. She was very well read and always keeping up with the news and current issues of the day. She was never shy about participating in conversation and discussion, and in that smooth, gentle way that she had, she could hold her own in any debate on a wide variety of subjects. Her fine education and training always came through. Dinner discussions were lively, informative, and fun. It was something my family would always look forward to. The fifth thing I remember from that night was music. I quickly realized after dinner that I was in the company of a musical family, much like my own. They all played instruments. Barbara was absolutely passionate about music, so much so that she took up the viola as an adult student. Viola and violin are difficult, uncomfortable instruments to play, and especially to learn. Barbara was the first to admit that she didn't have the greatest coordination and that her eyesight was terrible. But when it came to pursuing a passion, Barbara applied every ounce of grit, determination, and intelligence she could muster. Despite the odds, she became a very decent, reliable musician and violist. She was just warming up that night that we met. She would go on to become a key member of the Wayne Coterie, Community Chamber Music Group, her music club, and the Delaware County Community Symphony. You know, for a time, the Delaware County Symphony used to rehearse in Barbara's basement on Stone Ridge Lane. Winds, brass, strings, percussion, all of it. To this day, I can't figure out how she stuffed all those musicians, including herself, into that basement. She was a season ticket holder and supporter of the Philadelphia Orchestra for decades. She was very, very partial to 19th and 20th century romantics, but she had a clandestine soft spot for Baroque too. She told me often that the best musical moment of her life occurred right here in this room in 1977. In the spring of that year, my father, that guy that used to hang out around here, collected his musical posse for a performance of Bach's Fifth Brandenburg Concerto. Uncharacteristically, Ron rehearsed carefully and extensively for this one. So did Helen Savag on violin, Barbara's first husband, Bob, on flute, Ray Dorio and Liesl Brady on cello, indeed all of us, me included. That day, the weather was perfect. The church grounds were in spectacular bloom, and the performance came off without a single hitch, sour note, or missed entrance. We were all proud, and lunch after the performance, back at around Barbara's pool, was just as perfect. It was an experience Barbara treasured, not only because of the hard work and effort she put into in becoming a violist, but because she could share that accomplishment with such close and intimate friends. Musical joy that came with earned, deserved pride was perhaps just as delicious to her as one of her own rhubarb pies. It was about this time, in the mid-'70s, that I was playing with a couple of Barbara's musical ensembles, and I was invited into the Stone Ridge Lane Fishing Society. I know that some of you know what an avid deep-sea fisherman Barbara's first husband was. My first experiences deep-sea fishing were indeed with Bob, who loved night fishing for bluefish and day fishing for sea bass and flounder. I often watched as he would win the betting pool for the biggest fish caught on the boat that day. But we Hockenberrys noticed something funny would happen when Barbara was also on the boat. Despite being all thumbs with the fishing tackle, Barbara would, more often than not, wind up pulling in the biggest fish. It happened so often that the rest of us, shamefaced and with our egos trounced, stopped entering the betting pool when Barbara was on the boat. Even in rough waters, when nobody else was even getting a nibble, bang! Barbara would, in her cheerful voice, say, "Oh, this feels like a big one." We would watch her pole bend over, and with those stiff wrists that she had, she would slowly, ever so slowly, reel the winner into the boat. I bring this up for a reason. Barbara had this happy-go-lucky quality of success that was so characteristic of her worldly life. She came from a quiet backwater in the woods of central Pennsylvania, but kind of on a whim was applied to the University of Pennsylvania, and bang, lands admission into the Ivy League. After graduation from Penn, when she first applied for jobs in HR, I believe, bang, she lands a job making more than her contemporaries, including her first husband, by the way. When she started her own business, Rosemont Forms, bang, she was profitable beyond her wildest imagination in about 2 years. And don't get me started on what happened when she started speculating in the stock market. Big bang. Yet, despite it all, she never took any of this for granted, ever. She always viewed the world through the eyes of a child of the Great Depression, always grateful for her good fortune and generous with those who weren't so lucky. I stand before you here today as living testament of this. I was one of her employees for many long years, slugging my way through night school as an undergraduate. And without her help and cheerful encouragement, I'm not really sure whether I would have made it to or through medical school. And I'm sure there are others in this room today who, like me, were the beneficiaries of Barbara's generosity and fishing luck. All of us who knew Barbara know no matter how successful she was, Barbara always lived well within her means. Conspicuous consumption and an ostentatious lifestyle were things she scrupulously avoided. But there was one particular indulgence she did allow herself, and that was travel. I suppose she could have been very content spending her winters in the Florida Keys and her summers hanging out at the pool here in Pennsylvania, but Barbara had very, very itchy feet. She wanted to go places and see all the things that she dreamed about growing up in the rural town of Emporium, and she did. She became one of the best, most widely traveled people I knew. She was never afraid to drop everything and dash off to an exotic location, experience the local culture, and sample the cuisine. In this respect, she was truly fearless, and, dare I say, even insatiable. She covered most of Europe, much of Asia, including Red China, North Africa, and of all places, Antarctica? Wow. Yet I also know for a fact that one of the biggest regrets that she had in her life was that she hadn't taken the time to travel even more. She knew the wisdom in valuing experiences over possessions. And this is something I will always admire about her. On a personal side, when my wife and I got married, we took her suggestion and got hitched in Bali, Indonesia. It was a destination she had already been to and thought we couldn't find a lovelier spot for the occasion. Barbara, of course, was right. No life is without difficulties and challenges. Barbara's was no exception. I don't wish to dwell on them now. We're here to celebrate her life, and I will hold as best I can to that mission. However, there is one difficulty that Barbara had to grapple with that I will not avoid, and that was breast cancer. As a physician, I know what a scourge breast cancer is to us in our modern age. More than 1 in 10 women in this country will suffer from it, and Barbara did too. I was with her when she was first diagnosed, and I even took her to some of her radiation therapy and follow-up appointments. She handled it all bravely, with confidence and good cheer. All went well. And after 5 years, Barbara became a breast cancer survivor. And life went on. grandchildren came, many travels ensued, and her first husband, Bob, developed Lou Gehrig's disease, and eventually Barbara became a widow. She later in life found love again, married her second husband, Bill McNerney. After many fine, good years with Bill, he too left this mortal coil, and Barbara retired to independent living in Shenandoah. She seemed her usual self, full of cheer, loving the company of family and friends, participating in as many activities in Shenandoah as she could squeeze into her schedule. And then rather suddenly, she told us she was moving to Florida. Ostensibly, it was to be closer to her daughter, Nancy. At first, this seemed kind of plausible. Her eyesight, never good, was getting worse, and she became much more kyphotic, hunched over, and her back pain was making mobility difficult for her. But at the same time, she didn't seem like she really wanted to go. She loved her life at Shenandoah with many friends there and in the local area, and she didn't want to leave. We couldn't figure it. We asked her directly about it, and Barbara just hesitated and simply said, "I need to be closer to Nancy now." What Barbara did not tell us, and what she swore her daughter to secrecy about, was that the breast cancer had come back after 20 years, and it was not localized. It was a secret that, save a few family members, she took with her to Florida when she moved. We visited her several times after that move. She seemed in even more pain, especially in her back, yet she insisted on taking us out to lunch, just as cheerful and engaging as ever, despite what the cancer was doing to her spine, her bones, and even her brain. COVID-19 just made things worse, for it limited even further the company of family and friends. It must have been absolutely terrible for her. Being with and sharing with others was always so much a part of who she was. I can only imagine how awful the situation was for her. Nancy told us when she went on hospice, and then again when Barbara passed away. Only then did we learn the terrible secret that Barbara had held on to herself, and that she had chosen not to undergo radical chemotherapies, radiations, and even some other treatments. At first, it was hard for me to believe. As a longtime friend and a physician, it was hard for me to accept. But now, with time and reflection, it does make sense. Barbara had a good life. She was grateful for the many blessings she had, and she never wanted her problems to be anybody else's problem unless absolutely necessary. She wanted to be her same engaging, positive, effusive self until she physically couldn't do it anymore. And she faced her cancer reoccurrence with the same courage, strength, iron resolve, and determination that was the undercurrent of her life. No matter what face she presented to the public and to the world, her inner steel was always there, just out of view. If she chose to show the rest of us her infectious good cheer, it was because that is who she was, and nothing could dissuade her from it. And so we're left to celebrate Barbara's extraordinarily rich life. I will always remember her as the bright, sunny, cheerful, cultured, positive, and generous spirit with a core of strength and determination that remains a great example for anyone fortunate enough to have her in their lives. Whether you know her as a daughter, sister, grandchild, in-law, colleague, fellow musician or traveler, acquaintance or friend, we were all immeasurably enriched to have her with us in this journey of life. Indeed, Barbara, you might have had fisherman's luck, but by gracing us with your being, all the rest of us were pretty lucky too. Wherever Barbara has gone to, I pray that she has peace, the company of all of her friends and family who have preceded her, a great spot on that gossamer fishing boat in the heavens, a front row season ticket to the Celestial Orchestra, the power to journey wherever her spirit wishes to go, and, at the risk of sounding sacrilegious, dessert from St. Peter's patisserie that are even better than her own. May that one source of all things shower Barbara and us with peace and blessings. Thank you.
Thank you, David. We wanted to make some space. We wanted to make some space for sharing, and so if you feel so moved, let us take this time, and I'd invite you forward. You can come to the pulpit, or I'll run to you if you would rather stand in or sit in the pews here. And I invite you to share a memory or a word of gratitude, just for a minute or two. So come forward as you feel moved, or give me a signal.
Hi, I'm Wendy Schmidt. My husband, Jim. Yeah. I actually have a pretty loud voice. I don't hear any difference. So both of us knew the Wiles since our kids were born. We were here 40-some years, and I want it to be too loud. And we knew them in many ways. Probably music is the most important, because we both play cello, and we were invited numerous times to their home, as David said, to have wonderful music and incredible food, and swim in their swimming pool. It was all wonderful. They were generous enough to have us down to their home in the Keys, so we enjoyed that. David reminded me of rhubarb pie, and I remember when she was at Shenandoah that several times I made her our rhubarb from the garden, rhubarb strawberry pie, and brought it to her, and she was absolutely ecstatic about that. She was always so generous, both of them were, about taking us out to dinner when we were down there. They took particularly our older son. I don't know whether the younger son went fishing, but the older son loved fishing, and Bob would take him fishing at nighttime, daytime, I can't remember. But they were always very generous about that, too. And Bob was very particular about his fish. I remember one time we were invited to a place right next to Brimworth Theater, and he had brought his fish and had them prepared in certain ways. And it was, just caught that day and fantastic. So between her desserts and the fish that they brought, it was wonderful cuisine. I'm glad she was with Nancy, for her final days, that Nancy could have those memories and be caring, because she was a very caring person. I remember her mother, too, with her pies, and how wonderful and caring she was. And both Barbara and Bob were very sweet to her. They had an elevator put into their place so that she could, get up and down. And she was a wonderful lady, too. So the whole family is wonderful, and I thought David did an incredible job in summarizing all of the great things about them. So thank you. Jim and I miss them, and we love Bill McNerney, too. He was also a wonderful, wonderful man, and I'm glad she found love that second time.
Thank you.
I came upon Barbara through the Bryn Mawr Music Study Club and the Coterie before that. And I remember Renfield, the pictures of Bob and Barbara on the wall with their instruments, and her generous big room where we practiced the Dognani Quintet. And it was summertime, and I would come up from the shore for the rehearsals. And one time I said, "Why don't you come down for lunch?" And she did. I forget who drove, but two of them came down just for lunch and then went back again. And my relationship with her was basically through the Music Study Club, but I remember her warmth, her caring, her laughter. The last time I saw her was just before we disbanded the group, and I'll just never forget her.
Thank you.
I'm Kathy Mom. I'm Bill McNerney's daughter, and it was always so much fun. I remember they got married here in this church, and our youngest boy was the ring bearer. And when he happened to drop it and you heard it go tink, tink, tink on the floor. But I just wanted to say how much we love Barbara. She was so, so dear to me personally. She encouraged our boys in music and came to every concert. Our oldest was involved in, he played cello and also in the jazz band. And every time we were together, I just admired so much her curiosity for life, how sharp she was, and we had so many great discussions, and she'd make everything so special. We got to swim in her pool, and it was such a treat just to be with her. Our kids just loved that elevator. That was the coolest thing ever, an elevator in your house that they could play in. And I was just so grateful. One time we did get to go down to the Keys, and Barbara and Dad made that time so, so very, very special. She wanted to show us everything, and we got to enjoy her hogfish that they prepared special in the restaurant. And, you know, in later years at Shenandoah, just to go over and share lunch together, it was, the conversation was always just amazing, and she was just so curious about what the family was doing, and she just uplifted you. And David, you captured her so beautifully. I cherish everything you say, and you know, I'm just so grateful to have known Barb.
Well, wow. My name is Vincent Craig. I'm the director of music here at Mainline Unitarian Church. And you know, when I first arrived here 25 years ago, I knew that I had big shoes to fill following Ron Hockenberry. And one of the things that was just incredibly special was the fact that the Wiles just not only helped to embrace me as part of the MLUC family, but I felt like I was a part of their family too. And within maybe 3 or 4 months of my arrival here, I had become connected with almost all the things that you've heard about, the coterie and all the music and the Bryn Mawr Music Study Club. And I think maybe my 3rd week in town, there was a big chamber music party at the Wiles' beautiful home in Villanova at Renfield, in which they invited basically all the volunteer musicians, and back then we had a ton of them. And I remember arriving at about 3 p.m. and we just read things, played chamber music, and it was like a meet and greet, except we were playing, I was very busy that day, and we played chamber music until, I don't know, 8 o'clock at night. And these connections continued, and then it was time for Bob and Barbara to go to Florida for the winter. They came back, and then there were plans for me to come to the Keys and play a recital on a concert series in which Barbara was a board member. So that happened, and of course all the fishing, because I'm also very passionate about fishing. I have been since I was a child. And the many fishing expeditions in New Jersey, on the Captain Robbins in Sea Isle City, and then usually dinner afterwards. The Beijing Inn, which is now sitting empty in Bryn Mawr, right next to the movie theater, we used to bring usually we would get pretty large sea bass, and so we were able to actually bring our own sea bass into the restaurant, and they would cook it for us. And then we would order some sides and some soups and have a wonderful meal. And this was a tradition that continued even after Barbara stopped going fishing with us. If I knew that I had gone to the shore and had a good day, I would call Barbara and say, "Hey, Barbara, I've got fish." And I would come back. When I got back to Pennsylvania, I would pick her up at Renfield, and we would go and have a wonderful dinner at the Beijing Inn. So these are wonderful, wonderful memories that I have. And I think back to the number of wonderful, important life events that I was able to share with her, like my wedding and the birth of my son, and even a trip to Baltimore in 2002 when I did my lecture recital to complete my doctorate. And she was there. I think she came with Dave and Ann Hockenberry and was able to be a part of that. And when she moved to Florida, I never got to visit her down in Florida when she moved there, but permanently. But the phone calls were regular, and she always told me that how special our friendship was and how much she loved me, and I always appreciated that, and I certainly loved her too. And I'm so glad that I was able to be part of this celebration of her life today.
Thank you, Vincent.
Hi, I'm Susan, Aunt Barbara's niece. It is a big thing about family. My grandmother, the 4 sisters, you can't think about them without thinking of all of them together. They were so close. So growing up, I took for granted because we were the youngest. And we got to experience getting gifts from China, and we'd get books from Aunt Janet, and it was like I had multiple moms. It really was. And I know my mom said she can't get up and talk because that's her sister. That's her best friend. She wouldn't be able to do it without tears. And Aunt Barbara, even if you don't talk to her for a year, she remembers you. You're always there in her heart. There's always love. I mean, swimming, tab, ping pong, billiards. The biggest thing when they moved, and then when she moved from her place in Villanova, she said, "What do you want?" And I was like, "I want the food dogs." Because I remember growing up and running around her house as a child, and most of us entered the garage. So when you entered the garage, you went into the kitchen, and there was this portrait of Jonah and the whale and this wooden tiki dude. So those were huge memories in my childhood. So they're in my house. And not many people used the front door. There were 2 food dogs guarding the door. My little guy, he sits on them like I once did and thought they were great to ride. But coming home, it's just a constant reminder of the love of the family, even though I'm not big for picking up the phone and calling. And I've been waiting to share this. Before my Aunt Barbara passed, she called, left me a phone message. I'm not big on talking the phone. I don't do that. And her last words were to say, "I love you all." So she knew, she felt her time. Am I sad she's gone? Yes. But more than that, and what she always showed me, was to be grateful and happy and blessed with the connections we had in life and cherish the music and learning. So be happy she's spreading her light who knows where, and music who knows where. And she loved us all.
We are going to close our time of sharing on those words. But I want to leave you with the suggestion, and maybe even more strongly, the charge to feel that you have the power to keep sharing stories. Because in taking 15 minutes, 20 minutes to do it, we just touched the tip of the iceberg, and you have abundant time to share the stories and the memories and the love of a lifetime together. So I encourage you to that. Even today here as you walk out the door, know that you have the power to give life through memory and the love that you carry. We offer thanks for the many gifts left to us here in this room, here in our hearts, and far beyond these walls. As we close, may we pray that we have the strength to take these forward into the world. We pray that we may have the courage of her spirit, the wealth of her wisdom, and most of all, the love of her heart. May you all go in peace. May you be blessed. May the light of this world shine upon you, and may the power of the universe be gracious to you in your journeys. Amen.